Hello there, Erin here. Today I'm going to create a double page scrapbook layout for you. I've got lots of photos and I'm using the Autumn Toile collection. This is very beautiful fall inspired paper, but my photos have nothing to do with fall. In fact, these were taken during the summertime of 2015. So these are very old photos and I'm excited to be scrapbooking them today. Sometimes we just need to wait for the paper pack to come along and inspire us here. So lots of photos, and I was inspired by this paper here. Originally, when I shared this paper, I mentioned it would be great for hunting, and I realized I've scrapbooked most of my hunting photos. So I was looking to see what else would go with this. And even though there's deer on here, I was inspired by the oak trees. We went riding with my friends. It was such a fun day. We just loaded up in the trailer and went down on a Saturday and spent the day with my friends who live much lower in the foothills, and it's all oak trees and just, the brown tones and the horses. I just thought this paper would look really great with this. And it was fun because we rode to their local mini mart, which was quite a journey, and the kids got some ice cream and tasty treats, and there they are in the shade enjoying their treats. So it's a really fun memory. I'll tell you more about these photos as we go. But you can see the browns, and then of course the oak trees are going to be just perfect. A lot of these patterns, are just neutral patterns, and I'm not dealing with full sheets of paper here. I do have quite a few scraps plus some more over here. So let's go ahead and clear this out of the way. We'll jump right in. I have 2 sheets of white willow cardstock for my base, and this is a paper collection that you can go with like vanilla or beige colors, but I wanted the bright white to kind of brighten it up. So my friend Amy over at Paper Therapy with Amy, I saw a layout of hers, and her photo placement and design is what inspired me. I'm going to do something different with my paper layers, but seeing her layout helped me get started with my photos. So these are 3x4 landscape. I've got a 3x4 portrait, a true 4x6, and then these are 2 1/4. That does include the white border. So I printed them out on the same piece of paper, and then we're going to kind of fake it to make it look like one little photo strip here. So as I mentioned, we went to my friend's house and we were riding to the store. So these 2 pictures are of us making the journey to our destination, and then the kids enjoying their treats with the horses tied to the tree in the background. I just love that. My husband and my friend's husband enjoying their treats. And then when we got back, the kids were playing on their horses. They, took the saddles off and they have halters and they're bareback and they're just doing fun stuff in the arena. So there's a group photo of all the kids. These are my boys, Clayton and Hayden, and then their good friends, Luke and Audrey. They've grown up together. So you can see Clayton on his little trusty steed, Frank. I've definitely scrapbooked Frank before. These two were just an amazing pair. This was his, childhood horse. And I love this because he's just laying on them. And same thing here. They were pretending like old Western shooting and then falling off the horse, like in a dying scene. So he's laying on the ground there, and his horse is just patiently standing, like, what are you doing? And there's the kids standing on their horses there and just having a great time. So, as I mentioned, these were taken in 2015, and there's no time like the present to, scrapbook them, right? So, I want to bring in this paper, and what I'm thinking is it's kind of a busier pattern. So I don't want it, completely behind the photos. You'll see here this, they kind of stand out, but I think they'll look better on more of a neutral cardstock. And then we'll just accent with this pattern here. So I do have this particular pattern, which is the other side of that one. So let's see. This is 8 inches. I must have used the other 4 inches for another project. Will these fit on here? I think they're going to. Oh, yeah. Well, look at that. It's kind of meant to be. So I could just trim this off here and bring these in. Do you see how much, more they stand out on that pattern paper there that isn't quite so busy? So something like this. So let's bring in our other photos. I love the idea of green because the oak trees are green. There's also a lot of blues in the photos, and I do like this, but I feel like this is more mountainy and just not the direction, but I might bring in this color green in some cardstock. And then I've got this stripe pattern here, which could definitely work to complement these. I don't really want to bring in the orange. I love this paper. I'm going to be saving that for something else. That's actually the opposite side of that anyway. And then we could, go with this. I do have this other little scrap here. It's not quite the same size, but that's okay if we bring it over here. So Amy had hers all, again, her paper layers were different, but she did have these kind of matted on one piece of cardstock, and I'm thinking early espresso. So let me grab a piece for that. I've cut this to 3¼ wide. It's 12 inches long. I might leave it all the way top to bottom. I might trim that down. I'm not sure yet. So that does help those just kind of stand out there. And let's see, this one goes here and here. And then I want to carry this paper over so I can kind of trim this off and maybe have a little bit peeking out the other side here, just so, I'm replicating that pattern over there. And I think we don't need a whole lot to see that pattern and appreciate the interest that it adds. Okay, I've got my heading and I'm just going to start chopping this down here and I will be right back. Okay, so I just have a partial heading. What I did is cut this down to 1.5 inches. And then if we bring this in, let me just kind of start with these pieces and then we can go from there. I think I want to stair step this down. That's something I really like to do. And then carry this across like it's continuous. So we'll have the same height going wherever this falls, maybe 1/2 inch down. And then I did cut this one to, it was 8 inches and now it's 8 by 10. And bring those in like that. And I'm thinking, what if we bump this one over just a bit, maybe just 1 inch there, and then have this one like that. So if you are working with just scraps of paper and you bring this all the way to the edge, you only need a strip at the top and bottom. But I think I want some of that showing here. So I can always carve out the middle right here, but then I have room over here. Yes, I like that. So we'll do another inch there. I did cut these all down to 11 inches tall. So we have a 1/2 inch on the top and bottom. And then not sure what I'm going to do with that yet, but I do want a strip across the bottom here. So I could either go with that one. I kind of like the brown stripe there. So we could do this one and then you'll just have a little peeking out over there. And then what if I bring this guy in and kind of go like that. And then this gives me room for a little title, some embellishing, and then we could do some embellishing down over here as well. I also wanted to check my Country Wood wood grain pack, and I pulled out this one. It goes with this collection beautifully. I know I say it all the time. This is a craft room staple. If you don't have that, I would add it to your cart on the next order because it just seems to be the missing piece whenever I am looking for a little something something. So what if we slide this guy under here? And you know what? I like that. I like the wood with the grass and then the oak trees in there. I feel like that's the one. I've cut these to 12 inches wide by 4 inches tall, and I'm not sure if I want to bring this down to the bottom. Then we could save all that paper and just have this showing. But let's see. We'll slide this one in here. And again, I'm not sure. We could bring this pattern paper all the way to the bottom. Or let me just get these situated so we can get the full effect here. Or we can push this paper up. So let's see what this looks like. I think if I add a little inking to that pattern paper, you'll be able to appreciate the separation more. Yeah, I think I like it up just a little bit. So let's ink up the edges. I'll do a little bit with you here on camera with this early espresso ink just around this pattern paper, and I'll do the wood grain as well. This layout is looking very monochromatic. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I do like monochromatic, but I'm kind of brainstorming about different ways to bring in a pop of color. So we'll revisit that later. I don't have everything adhered down yet because I'm not sure where my embellishments will land. I might want to bump this up to give me more room down here or even maybe bump it down. So depending on where that lands, I will eventually cut out the portion that's behind it. So I don't want to glue that down yet. I did, however, cut out the wood grain because I know that will be, hidden. So just kind of loose for now. I guess I could glue down the photos, but you never know. Those might need to move around as well. I do have autumn trees. I've been really looking forward to using this on a scrapbook layout. They're nice big trees, and I think they're going to be the perfect embellishment for this. You can stamp and die cut or die cut. This is like a leaf layer. There's so many different ways to configure these. And then a cute little deer border. I wish I still had the card, but I gave it away already. So I'm going to be using this one. I also have this stamp set. It's called Unbridled Beauty. You're getting a sneak peek. This is an upcoming online exclusive that will be released in January. And I have a lot of kind of country horse themed stamps. So this would be really nice to have in my collection. And I really like the way the artist has drawn these. So lots of different, you can do like a little barn scene and then different horses here, cute little horseshoe. So inspired by artwork from Stampin' Up, I created this card and kind of just used what I had in my stash. This is the country, what is this paper pack here? Let's see, country lace. I thought this would be perfect. It has like a nice country western look to it. And I used the horseshoe stamp to add a little background interest, again, inspired by the artwork from Stampin' Up. And stamp the little sentiment here. Thank you for being a true friend. And then on the inside, I created a little scene, kind of a monochromatic scene using elements from the stamp set. So I have more artwork to share, which I'll be sharing in my catalog walkthrough, but I wanted to show you that one for now. So anyway, I think this and this will be nice. So let's go ahead and create some embellishments. Let's scooch this out of the way so I have a nice open workspace. I've got my Pierce mat and some crumb cake cardstock. And let me adhere my little magnet ink tray here for my Memento black ink that holds it in place. The glass board is magnetic, and so is that little turquoise ink tray. Unfortunately, the Stampin' Up! Or Close to My Heart inks are too big for those, but I'll show you another way I am using them. So there's my horse there. And then we'll let that dry for a moment and ink up our tree. Again, I'm using the Memento Black ink because I'm going to add some color to this tree image with my Stampin' Blend markers. So this is such a nice big tree, and here is the outline die. So you could do it just like that, or you can add the inner die that cuts out the branches and embosses the wood grain in the trunk. So you want to line those up. I've run that through my die cutting machine, and now I have both pecan pie and old olive Stampin' Blend markers. So I've got a light and dark of each, and I'm using the brush tip. This makes it so fast and it just colors quickly. And I am coloring outside of the edges there. I don't want the white border. I'm adding the pecan pie to any of the branches or trunk area. For more ideas for the autumn trees set, you can check out Dorothy over at Scrapbooking Quebec. She's used this on several layouts, and as always, her layouts are amazing. So definitely check out what she's done with this tree bundle here. I chose green to highlight the green trees, but you could definitely make these yellow or red. You can go with any fall type colors. I mean, that's what's great about stamps is you can customize them. So I went around the edge and then added to where the stamping had like tree leaves. I used the darker color, and now I'm using the lighter old olive to kind of fill in the, rest of the tree area. And we'll do the grass on the bottom. And this just gives it some light and dark shading, and I like the way that looks and helps things to kind of stand out. Now for my horse here, I've grabbed my crumb cake markers. I do want to use pecan pie. Do I want the light or the dark? I think I want the light. So I'm using the brush tip marker for the mane and tail and some of the shadowy areas. And then I'll use the crumb cake, the darker crumb cake for the shaded areas. And then I'll go in with a lighter crumb cake and just fill in some of those areas. It will dry as it lightens up. And of course, It's on crumb cake cardstock, so I didn't need to color it at all if I didn't want to. This doesn't have a die, so I'll fussy cut that out. I have two trees. I went ahead and made a second, and then even this smaller tree here. So you can see there's the stamp, and then I chose to die cut the branches from pecan pie paper, and you can just put it right over the top there. I know I want a tree up in this area here and possibly the smaller one kind of layered in. And then this tree kind of down on the diagonal to the lower right. So I've got my little horse here. You can see how that lightened up. It's not totally showing up against the brown background. I mean, you can see it, but I do wish that would stand out a bit more. What about down here? Maybe it would stand out. Yeah, still not, popping as much as I want. Let's work on the title. I've got Taking the Scenic Route from Weekend Adventures. And this is a clear stamp here. What I'm going to do is use my nested essential dies and do a little partial die cutting to add some interest to this strip of crumb cake cardstock. So I think this one will be just the right size for my title. And what you need to do is hang it off of your die plates so it doesn't cut the edge that's hanging off. I'll run that through my die cutting machine. You can see we have the arrow and the stitching, and now I'm going to line it up. And again, this is just to make it longer so it will work for my title. I'm kind of lining up the stitching marks in the groove, and now I'm hanging the banner tail off the edge of my plates. Now I can stamp my title, and it's not perfect. You can see the stitching isn't joined in the middle. I'm totally okay with that. You're not going to notice it in the end. Let's line up our taking the scenic route because that's what we were doing, riding to the store, taking the scenic route. I've got early espresso ink, and I'll just ink this up a couple times. When I was just a girl, I did grow up with a horse and I boarded him at our local stables. And there was lots of other young ladies there, and we would just ride all the time. And one day we got a wild hare and rode our horses 7 miles to go through the drive-through of Taco Bell on our horses. I wish we had cameras back then because it was just a funny memory, and the Taco Bell employees were just loving it. Now, we talked about adding a pop of color. I've got Cajun Craze, and you'll notice it just really matches the sorrel coats of the horses in the photos. And I am thinking about bringing in my spotlight on Nature Circle dye. My friend Bonnie actually suggested this. She said, "What about making it look like a sun behind the horse?" I was texting her saying, "Help, what does it need?" And yep, she was right. That looks fantastic. So let's do a little bit more stamping. I've got my Memento Black ink pad here, and I'm bringing in the Unbridled Beauty stamp set. We're going to use the horse head image and make an embellishment. And I am so grateful that they have this horse facing in to the left while the other horse is facing out to the right. I really appreciate that because putting it on the opposite page, I like my embellishments kind of looking into the layout when possible. So I've got crumb cake cardstock, and we're going to add a little coloring to this image. Now I plan on cutting this out with a circle, so I do not care what the bottom of the horse looks like. We're just getting messy there, extending the color far enough to where it will be colored within the circle. I'm just going back and forth with the crumb cake and the pecan pie, just adding color wherever I want to add a little shadow. So this is a 2-inch circle punch, and you can see I'm lining it up so that again, that bottom of the horse didn't matter what that looked like. We'll punch it out. And then what I want to do is mount this on some early espresso cardstock here. I have added some foam tape to the back of that already, and now we have an embellishment. Let's go ahead and create one more. This is 2 3/8 inch circle, and there's the fence, the horses, and the barn. We're going to create a little scene here, and I'm going to stamp them all in black. I'm going off the edge. I don't want this on my Stampin' Pierce mat. So I'm using that Stampin' Pierce mat because whenever you put a piece of foam underneath your clear stamps, it will help you get a better impression. You've seen me use the back of my Versamat, but those are no longer available. So I wanted to show you that you can use these Pierce mats for the exact same, technique. So we're just creating a little scene. Now let's add some grass for our horses to eat. I've got mossy meadow. So I'm using both mossy meadow and old olive on this layout, kind of back and forth here. So I'm just adding some grass, and we're going to make this look more watercolor-ish. So stamp one there, maybe a little bit here. And then you want to use a water brush. I don't want this very wet. So I kind of dried off the tip there. So it's just damp. And I'm kind of just, like I said, watercoloring, kind of blurring the grassy areas there. And another thing you could do is use a blending brush and ink blend the lower half of the circle first with a green ink and then stamp your images over the top of it. I've also matted this one on some early espresso. So now we have these super cute little embellishments. Maybe put one up here. So since I added that Cajun craze, I do want to bring that into the right-hand side of the layout to repeat that. I'm kind of messing with this tree. I don't know how much of it I want covering that photo. So maybe we could tuck it partially behind. And then this kind of anchors that tree so it's not floating. So back to my nested essentials, I cut two more little banner tails and then I cut a tag, which I'm going to use for my journaling. So again, I just like to replicate that color. So basic shapes is a great way to do that. I've got a larger tag here from Nested Essentials, or not a tag, it's a banner. And you know what? Those are too similar. So let's add some stamping to create our own pattern paper. I've got the horseshoe and we're going with tone on tone. So it's a darker version. And I'm going to random stamp the horseshoe, kind of creating like a little triangle shape as I go through and rotating. Toad! The elusive toad just cruised through. That's our hay bale kitty. I don't know if you've ever heard that story. I went down to get a truckload of hay, and the guy's loading all this hay, and we hear this tiny little meow. And there was this day old kitten in the hay bales. I'm like, can I have her? He's like, yeah, please take her. There's plenty more. She's a bit of a grumpy cat. She's sweet to the people. She likes my husband and she likes my oldest son, Hayden, but definitely more elusive. So I'm super excited about these arrows. These are awesome. So they're from a die set. I'll show you. And also, I was going to show you another great idea for these ink trays. They're magnetic, so you can throw your dies in there that you're currently using. So I have this arrow over here for my horse to stand on. And then I'm thinking of adding some here. I love arrows. I was cutting a whole bunch on my Cricut and just kind of always had them in my stash. So I'm super excited to have these. They're from an upcoming Valentine's set, believe it or not. That'll be in the January catalog. So I'll be sharing a sneak peek of that when I do my unboxing video here soon. But let's make it look like one big arrow. So let's overlap these two and kind of hide the center so it just looks like one long arrow. That's pretty cool. I like that. Do we need another one? Nah, I think less is more. Up here, maybe? No. I'm using this tag for my journaling. So what we need to do is create a little pocket. So I've got some foam tape here and I'm going to create a spot for this tag to kind of slide into. I don't want it super tight. So I'm giving myself a little bit of room here and then we'll go along the bottom. I'm using the tag as my placeholder here. So we'll do both sides and then a strip on the bottom so it doesn't like fall through and then the tag can kind of slide in and out. Some people choose to cut their page protectors. Whenever I use this technique for journaling, I try to position it at the top of the page. So I use top loading page protectors so I can just reach in the top of the page. And that way I don't have to cut my page protector. Saves me a step. Very easy to reach in the top. So I'm just trying to get that all the way to the bottom. I'm going to scoot this down, line it up, so it's adhered straight and then that slides right in there. And I'm going to journal on both sides. Now, I don't want this to interfere with it. So is that going to work? I'm ripping off the foam tape that is interfering with the tag so I can still get that overlap look, but this still slides freely. I added a bit of this irregular weave trim to the top of my tag, and then I pulled this from my stash. It's called Legendary Moments. This is an oldie, and I stamped out this here, a true blue, honest to goodness trailblazing memory. And then I'm thinking about I've got stars in here all ready to go, and they match well enough. And then this element here, I think this might look kind of cool underneath our title, Taking the Scenic Route. You could do it that way, maybe upside down. Yeah, I like it. Let's go for it. I'm going to use early espresso ink for that. And it's fun just to add these little stamped details here. And it'll kind of give a little flourish and make this title a bit more prominent. It's fun to revisit your old stamps, right? Just give them some new life, mix them in with your new collections. No, don't like that. Not quite right. No. Well, shoot. I really want to use this. There. What about here? Yep, I think that's the one. I like it. And then these stars are just very westerns, maybe here and possibly up there. I'm feeling like it needs a little more green. We've got the green in the trees, so I just happen to have this left over. It's corrugated mossy meadow cardstock that I've sanded that was from some cards that I made. So let's cut this in half. I just want a hint of green. We have green in the upper left-hand corner and the lower right corner, but I want to bring it in somewhere else. So I'm thinking this could be a super cool element. I probably wouldn't have thought of this if it hadn't been staring at me over in my scrap pile. But yeah, what if we slide some under here? I love adding embossing texture and sanding it like that. It just looks really cool. It's a nice rugged masculine texture. And again, we just want a hint of this. And it's subtle, but I think it does the trick. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that flush and I'll trim out the other side and get those adhered down off camera. This layout did take me a bit. I actually walked away from it for a while and, texted a photo to my friend and said, help. And she's the one that said to use that circle like a setting sun. And that pop of Cajun craze is just what it needed. But it's okay. Sometimes we just got to walk away, take a break, and come back the next day, right? Everything that is available, I will leave listed in the description box below. Many of these items have been moved to the last chance section and are marked down, so that's awesome. If you're looking for more masculine boy inspiration, check out these videos right here.